Hello and welcome to Absolute Trust Talk. I'm Kirsten Howe, the host here at Absolute Trust Council. And I'm so excited today to have this episode, or I think it's going to turn out to be a series of episodes about cryptocurrency and more specifically Bitcoin. This is something that has fascinated me for a long time, and I know virtually nothing about it. So I've invited an expert to talk to us about Bitcoin. And I think this is going to really be interesting to the audience because I'm sure I'm not the only one who would like to know more, but I don't even know where to start. All right. So without further delay, I would like to introduce Jirayr Kembikian. He is a certified financial planner, a wealth advisor. He's the managing director and co-founder of Citrine Capital, which is a San Francisco-based wealth management and tax planning firm. They primarily serve tech professionals, founders, and business owners. He specializes in navigating the complexity of equity compensation, private investments, and, not surprisingly, Bitcoin wealth strategies. He has over a decade of experience guiding clients through liquidity events and complex financial decisions. So Jirayr brings a very grounded yet forward-thinking perspective to building and preserving wealth, and I think you're really going to see that forward-thinking part today. Jirayr, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good. So as I said, we're going to be talking about cryptocurrency generally, but we're primarily going to focus on Bitcoin. What I want to start with is you told me, this is fascinating to me, that 1 in 7 Americans own Bitcoin, that's a fascinating fact. But let's start with a little bit of background on cryptocurrency generally and why it has become so popular.
Yes. So as we all know, Bitcoin and crypto has exploded over the last decade or so for many different reasons. It all started with Bitcoin. And actually before Bitcoin, there were decades of failed projects that contributed to what Bitcoin ultimately became. So it launched in 2009, and I never would have thought approximately 15 years later that it would be what it is today. It's truly remarkable. So
were you an early skeptic in 2009? No, this is just not going anywhere.
in my experience, everyone gets Bitcoin wrong at least the first time, and us included. So we had back in 2014, approximately, clients that were bringing Bitcoin to us, and maybe other cryptocurrencies at the time, but specifically Bitcoin, bringing it to us. And no surprise, we brushed it off as being very speculative.
Right.
And it's really one of those things that takes so many different disciplines simultaneously to understand. You have to understand math, you have to understand cryptography, you have to understand computer engineering, you have to understand how energy works. And all these things are not super related. And it's no surprise that many, including us, got it wrong the first time. So,
okay. And so my admission that I find it confusing and I don't know anything about it, that's not, that doesn't make me different. Okay.
So from that perspective, I really, when I start talking about Bitcoin and crypto, I always think about 3 different buckets, where in bucket 1, and this is really what the current legislation has already started to solidify and potentially continuing to solidify. So in bucket 1, there is Bitcoin and nothing else. We believe it is the best store of value. We believe it's the hardest money possible, hardest in the sense that it's hard or impossible to create more of. There will only be 21 million Bitcoin, and that's different from virtually, I'll skip over to bucket 3, which is every other crypto. So crypto means that there is a centralized authority that issues the tokens, which is very different than Bitcoin. Bitcoin has no central authority, which is often why we refer to it as, or here to refer to it as, decentralized. With crypto, you have a central organization who controls the main supply. They also, in many cases, have the ability to simply negate transactions or roll back transactions, which can be very problematic or concerning for some folks. if they're on the unfavorable side of that. And we often refer to bucket 3 crypto as kind of a casino, where I suppose there is a purpose for a casino, right? If you're going into it to gamble and speculate, but we really don't think of it as prudent in a financial plan and from an allocation perspective. And then to backtrack a little bit, in bucket 2 are what's called stable coins, which the recent legislation supports and solidifies, where essentially you have a cryptocurrency which is pegged to the dollar or some kind of asset, but specifically the dollar is the most popular. And that's extremely popular for many people overseas who simply don't have access to the dollar and need some kind of somewhat stable currency to transact. And it also provides a lifeline for lowering costs and being able to transact across borders and whatnot.
Okay, so Bitcoin is different from every other crypto. Every other one has unlimited. They could just keep, I'm not going to say print because I know it's not printed, but releasing more and more of every other crypto.
That's definitely one part of it. The other big part of it is what backs Bitcoin. So we often hear about Bitcoin uses energy, which is absolutely true. And there's a reason for that. The energy consumption is a way to secure the network, and it is a way for folks who, so if you're not spending energy or money essentially, you can cheat the system. And that's really the way that Bitcoin is designed. It's called a proof of work system, where the energy is supporting the Bitcoin network. And as a result, it is the most secure computer network in the world.
Okay, so the other cryptocurrencies are more vulnerable.
Yes, absolutely. There have been numerous hacks across other cryptocurrencies. There's all kinds of downtime, as I mentioned previously. There's numerous mainstream cryptocurrencies outside of Bitcoin that have had their blockchain, or ledger is another word for blockchain. They've had their blockchain reverted back for unknown reasons, which is, well, you can say what you want about that, but it's not right from the Bitcoin perspective.
Right, yeah. Okay, so, but talk a little bit about the central authority and how Bitcoin specifically, I guess, is has developed as a store of value. What the pressures that led to that happening?
Yes, that's a great question. So I would go back and start this conversation with the growing national debt. And this is not a US problem, this is a global problem, but we'll focus on the US for the context of this conversation, where we've seen over time, especially over the last 5 to 10 years, our national debt skyrocket. And this is not a left versus right problem, this is an everyone problem.
And it's a fact. It is a fact.
It is a fact. It is an
Yeah.
absolute fact where, as of today, I want to say we're in the high $30 trillion of national debt, and that realistically is only going to continue. So, from a mathematical perspective, from a factual perspective, once you get above a certain point where, similar to how if you have a lot of credit card debt, for example, right, where it's difficult to keep on top of the interest that is
To
accruing
just
on that credit card.
service the debt. Yeah.
So just in order to service the debt, mathematically, the only way forward is for the government or Federal Reserve to print more money. And that is one of the main foundations on why Bitcoin has become so popular, is because the US dollar and virtually every other currency in the world is continuing to get debased via unlimited money printing.
So
And
meaning it can't keep up with inflation.
exactly. So the further the currency gets debased, you simply are losing your purchasing power over time. And we've seen that almost exponentially over the last 5 years. But if you look back any number of decades, that really has continued. But it's definitely accelerated in the last five
Got it.
years or so.
Yeah. Okay.
And if we compare the Bitcoin system versus the US dollar system, for example, with Bitcoin, as I mentioned previously, we have a 21 million supply cap. No matter what happens, there will only be 21 million Bitcoin ever in existence. Versus the US dollar, there is, of course, no supply cap. And it's crazy to think that almost a third of the dollars ever created were created in the last 5 years.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's crazy. Okay, so 21 million ever. That sounds like it's creating urgency for people to get in. Like, we're going to run out of Bitcoin any day, but walk me through that.
You're absolutely right. Where there is more and more demand that's growing via either retail or institutions or who have you. So there's more demand growing, and the supply simply cannot increase. So from a pure economics perspective, what happens when you have a growing demand but fixed supply? It doesn't
Price
take
goes up.
exactly, it doesn't take that much of an imagination to assume what does happen over time. So the question becomes, how can you own it? How can you acquire it? How can you store it? And there's lots of different directions we can go. I think the biggest part to be aware of in this conversation is each of these buckets, if you will, have trade-offs, just like anything else. So,
Okay, so we're gonna get into now. Before we get into that, I just want to focus. I want to go back for half a step. The 21 million. I don't know why this intrigues me so much. When are we going to hit 21 million?
That's a great question. So there is a specific supply. So the distribution schedule of Bitcoin is fixed. It's actually fixed in the code, and anyone can read that code. Approximately over the next 100 years is how it will get distributed. So that's also a very interesting point, especially in comparison to other currencies, where no one can predict with any kind of certainty when additional dollars will get flooded into the system, right? Absolutely no one. And if they are telling you that, they're probably lying. So in comparison to Bitcoin, there has been a fixed schedule since inception. This is something that some people may have heard of, which is called the halving cycle, which essentially every 4 years, the amount of Bitcoin every 10 minutes is halved. So after every 4 years, that amount of supply that's being distributed amongst the released to the network is halved. So like I mentioned, over the next 100 years is approximately when it will be complete.
Okay, so they're rolling it out slower and slower.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay. So I want to transition into talking about the various buckets, the various ways that one can own Bitcoin. But let's take a break. We're gonna follow this up in a next episode. Thank you, Jirayr, for introducing the conversation, and thank you all for listening. And I hope you'll join us in our next episode.
Thank you for joining us today for another episode of Absolute Trust Talk Live. If you enjoyed listening in, then don't forget to subscribe. You can find us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you may listen by searching Absolute Trust Talk. While you're there, we would also love for you to leave us a review. And then why not share your favorite episodes with family, friends, or colleagues too? You can find all of our shows and corresponding show notes by visiting absolutetrustcouncil.com. You'll also find a variety of other free resources, including our ebooks, videos, blogs, presentations, and more. If you need help with your estate planning or administration, we also offer a free discovery call to help get the process started. You can find more information on booking your session by visiting absolutetrustcouncil.com/scheduling. Don't forget to keep an eye out for our next live episode. If you join us for the broadcast, you can submit questions during the show. But if not, don't worry. You can always get in touch with us by sending a quick message to info@absolutetrustcouncil.com. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you soon.